The prison that controls most of us, well, it has no walls. It doesn't have guards. There are no physical locks anywhere. And yet, millions of us wake up every single day and willingly walk right back into our own cells. We tweak our personalities, we completely silence our true thoughts, and we just exhaust ourselves performing for an audience that, ironically, is too busy performing for us to even notice.
So, why do we do it? Why do we give other people so much power over our lives? Most people spend their entire lives living for an audience, completely unaware of their own captivity. We curate our existence. We're constantly measuring our worth by the nods, the smiles, and the validation of strangers, coworkers, and even our own family. We essentially surrender the pen that writes our life story to whoever happens to be watching at the time.
Let's get into Section 1. The invisible prison and living for the audience.
See, from the moment we're born, we're basically conditioned to seek approval. We quietly spend our days desperately trying to dodge criticism and chase validation. Think about it. We literally gauge the temperature of the room before we even speak. We look at others not to actually understand them, but to figure out how they're judging us. And this isn't just a bad habit, right? It's a psychological survival mechanism that has spun completely out of control. We live in this constant terror of being cast out of the tribe. We are sold this really dangerous illusion. We actually believe that if we just conform enough, if we can just get absolutely everyone to approve of us, we're finally going to feel safe. But the reality? The reality is a life of continuous, exhausting anxiety. We think conformity brings safety, but it's really just forcing us to quietly hand over our core identity to the fear of judgment. You are essentially paying for a false sense of security with your own soul.
Which brings us to Section 2. The most dangerous belief, or the trap of universal likability. Most of us walk around holding on to this deep subconscious conviction that we need everyone to like us just to be valuable. We actually equate being liked with being worthy of existing. But swearing loyalty to everyone's expectations is honestly like making impossible promises. You turn into a politician in your own life, constantly trying to appease every single demographic. You smile when you're secretly furious. You say yes when every fiber of your being is screaming no. And psychology actually shows us exactly why this hurts so much. Your brain processes social rejection using the exact same neural pathways it uses to process physical pain. No wonder we contort ourselves to avoid it, right? But here's the thing. Chronic people-pleasing doesn't build connection. It builds walls. Right beneath that super polished exterior is a deep, dark reservoir of hidden resentment toward the very people you're exhausting yourself to impress. Let's look at Section 3, the courage to be disliked and discarding other people's tasks. If you want to be free, you have to pay the toll. And that toll is having the courage to accept being misunderstood, facing rejection, and yes, being disliked. Now, freedom doesn't mean running away to some isolated island. Freedom means standing exactly where you are, looking the world right in the eye, and no longer begging it for permission to be yourself. This requires what we can call a strict separation of tasks. Think of it this way. Your task involves your actions, your choices, your integrity. Their task, that's how they choose to perceive or judge you. So when you're bending over backwards to make someone like you, you are invading their task. You're actually trying to manipulate their mind. And trying to control someone else's judgment of you isn't just impossible. It is a deeply unfree way to live. True freedom means stepping back, doing your task, and simply letting them do theirs. Moving on to Section 4, the past cannot own you and the choice of the present. If freedom is really just a choice, you might be asking, well, why don't we just choose it? The answer to that is incredibly uncomfortable. See, we often use our past as a highly convenient explanation for our present suffering. It usually goes like this. First, we face a terrifying new challenge, maybe setting a firm boundary or risking some social rejection. Second, we feel this intense, visceral fear of failing or getting hurt. And third, to protect ourselves, we subconsciously manufacture anxiety or we use our past trauma as a shield. We say things like, well, I'm damaged, or I'm a people pleaser because of how I was raised. We do this because staying broken and familiar is infinitely easier than taking the truly terrifying step to change right now. We basically turn our personal history into a cage so we don't have to take responsibility for our present. The past isn't actually holding you back. Your fear of the present is. You have to realize you are not a machine just running on old programming. You do not lack the capacity for freedom. You only lack the courage to step into it. Your life is being decided right here, right now. The past absolutely does not dictate your future unless you willingly allow it to serve as your alibi. You're a human being. You are entirely capable of redefining your existence in this exact moment if you're only brave enough to leave those excuses behind. This brings us to Section 5, the truth about happiness and the shift from self to others. So if constant validation doesn't bring us happiness, and if we finally throw out our excuses, what actually brings us joy? Well, to find true happiness, we have to execute a massive psychological shift. We've got to turn our obsession away from the mirror. We must shift our relentless focus from how do people see me to how can I contribute? Chasing approval, it's just like a stone rolling downhill. It's effortless, gravity. It's giving in to our lowest instincts for instant recognition. But eventually it grinds you down until there is nothing left of you but a smooth, featureless surface. Climbing uphill, on the other hand, is actively resisting that primal impulse to please. It is hard. It takes conscious daily effort. But climbing uphill is literally the only way to build true, unshakable self-worth. When you finally stop scanning the room asking, "What do you think of me?" and you start asking, "What can I do to help?" that is when you unlock true meaning. True worth isn't some trophy handed to you by an audience. It is found in contribution. It's this deep internal sense of being of use to someone else. It's about building relationships where you aren't competing, you aren't comparing yourself, and you definitely aren't begging for praise. You just belong, exactly as you are. Let's dive into Section 6, what real freedom is and the ultimate cost. Because true freedom, it isn't just some vague, feel-good concept. It has teeth. It has a very real price tag. And honestly, it's not for the faint of heart. Freedom is the state of no longer needing to be liked by everyone. There is a cost to exercising your autonomy. And that cost is that someone, somewhere, is going to dislike you. And that is perfectly okay. Actually, it's necessary. If absolutely no one dislikes you, it probably means you're living a lie. Being disliked is simply the undeniable receipt that you are finally living by your own principles. I want you to imagine a truly free individual. This is someone who has finally completely stopped asking the world for permission to exist. They've abandoned the exhausting need for applause. They embrace the fear of criticism because they know it just means they're being genuine. And even more importantly, they have escaped the agonizing trap of comparison. Look, in a world that is obsessed with social media, status, and these invisible scoreboards, comparison guarantees suffering. It is a literal poison that convinces you that someone else's success is somehow your failure. But the free individual recognizes that there is no competition. They aren't running anyone else's race. They live fiercely, quietly, and powerfully by their own values. And that is the ultimate liberation. Now, this explainer is deeply inspired by the profound psychological concepts found in the book, The Courage to be Disliked. We've really only just scratched the surface of these massive, life-altering ideas today. If you feel ready to completely dismantle your own invisible prison, I highly, highly encourage you to read the original book. I placed a link for you right down in the description below. I want to leave you with this final thought. Freedom isn't about achieving universal love. Freedom is the profound, quiet realization that you no longer need to be loved to exist. The moment you stop living for other people's permission is the exact moment your life finally begins.